Well, hello, everyone. I have with us today Frank Davila, who's a professor at the University of Northern Colorado in the Center for Urban Education. And I'm excited to share his journey with you today. We're both part of an organization called CALMA. It's the Colorado Alliance for Latino Mentors and Authors. And this is a very new organization, and it's designed to promote and preserve the written words of Latino authors in Colorado. That's our vision right now. And so I'm really, really excited to be a part of this group. I'm so energetic, excited to really get our stories out there, which I think is really, really, really critical in this day and age, because as we know, so many of our stories are not in the history books. So many of our lives are not necessarily seen in the mainstream best-selling work that exists right now. And there's so many deserving authors and so many deserving works and literary works that need to be out there. And so that's what this group is hoping to do. And so I'm really excited to talk with Frank today and have him share his journey with you. And also to talk a little bit about his own work, his own published works, and to give you sort of a taste of what he's done and what needs to be shared out there with you all as well. And so first of all, I will just let him tell us a little bit more about himself.
Well, thank you very much, Kimberly. It's a pleasure to be here and also an honor. Basically, I've been working in the field of education for a multitude of years and worked in Texas. I've worked as an assistant principal, teacher, central office administrator. I also worked as a state director for English language acquisition in Colorado. And then I did some binational work with Mexico and US on migrant students as a consultant. And then currently I've been teaching classes at the University of Northern Colorado at the Center for Urban Education. And also I've been doing a lot of mentoring and coaching of principals and other leaders that just they need to find a way to pause and think about where they're going and what they want to do and how to approach different things. But as far as education, I started way back working on my doctorate. And I recall one time one of the professors said to me, because I'm a second language learner, I spoke English as my second language, and then at the university I struggled initially with my English in the written form. And so when I was pursuing my master's and then my PhD, one professor said, well, you're very weak in writing, you'll never get your PhD. And so that was kind of a challenge for me. And I'm thinking that there are many kids out there today that have similar challenges where perhaps some people don't believe in them. But that was something that pushed me forward to do more. And basically, as in education, I enjoy being a principal and enjoy being a teacher, and I still connect with that. I still keep up with the writings, with the research, because I want to be able to speak about education and that's current and also that makes sense and will support somebody. So it's been a good ride, a good journey on the educational side. Loved every minute of it, and I continue to find ways to help other people.
That's awesome. What an incredible journey. So yeah, it's interesting how those pivotal moments when people say those words to us of discouragement, and you can kind of go either way with it. You can either get discouraged and let those words sort of bring you down and disrupt your path, or you can kind of take on the challenge, I guess, and just move forward. And it looks like you got your PhD, you are a writer, you have a published book, so it sort of makes people who say those negative things kind of eat their words, and I'm so grateful, and I know that the students that you've been working with are grateful as well for your focus on really helping them and helping people that have gone through similar situations.
There were a lot of different growth steps along the way, and I think we all experienced those. One that I left home when I was 18, a little town, and went to Dallas, Texas, which is a huge place to live with my cousins. And then I started school that fall at the university. But it was something where I worked myself through university, college, and the whole 4 years. And then I was drafted. I started teaching my first year, and then that December I got drafted into the military. And I wanted to finish out the year because they wanted me to report in February. And I said, wait a minute, I still have March, April, May, June to finish out teaching. So I said, can I get a delayed entry? And he said, well, you can, but it's going to cost you an extra year. So instead of doing 2 years, I did 3 years at U.S. Army.
Oh.
And because of that, I went through officer candidate school. So I came out as an officer. And that was very helpful down the road. And I think you mentioned opportunities. Many times we do have doors that open for us, and we have to have the courage to step forward and open the door and do something different. And I think that was something that really helped me because at that time, once you enter a leadership program, then you know when you're successful that you are a leader. And so you have to then behave like a leader and do more training and be more productive. I remember when I was also began a chapter of LULAC in 1981, I was the initial president for that chapter, and that's still going on. And then about 10 years later, I started another organization called BEAM, which is Bilingual Education Association of the Metroplex, and that's still going on. And so I don't know why I like to start work pieces of organizations, but I remember when I was in LULAC, and because a few of us were not allowed to be administrators, we were not invited to join the JCs, Kiwanis, Rotary, and so forth. So we would go to the city council, school board, county commissioners, and so forth, and kind of present our voice sometimes in a very strong manner. And I think that's probably some of us were labeled troublemakers, and therefore we weren't able to get jobs later on. But all of that reminds me of the time when I was at the university as well. There was a guy named Ramsey Muniz. He was an attorney, and he ran for governor of the state of Texas. Same time era as Jorge Gonzalez when he was in Colorado doing his work with La Raza Unida. And also that was after Cesar Chavez laid the groundwork in the 60s. So I met Cesar Chavez a couple of times, and I never met Corky, but I did meet Ramsey. And so you had all these powerful social justice leaders out there. And I think that kind of set me on a road and a tone that I wanted to make a difference somehow. And I didn't know exactly how, but I wanted to do my part. And obviously writing was one of my big goals, and being a principal, getting my PhD and so forth. So you begin to set goals for yourself because you see other people and what they've done along the way to pave the way for us. And so anyway, the comments you made earlier may have brought back those memories as to where we are and how we get there.
Yeah. And there's still so much to do. And wow, I'm excited. I'm in the presence of a pioneer. I didn't realize that you were part of the LULAC and starting that organization, and now we're starting CALMA. Yeah, it's so it's really, really awesome to hear that you're doing that. And I think again, it is looking back to what has been laid before us and sort of taking that and moving it forward. And I agree with you. When I was in college, that's when I became aware of all of the people that had gone before me to help me get to where I was, and in my mind, that's sort of been, I guess, kind of my focus as well. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to become a teacher, so I could provide for students what I didn't get. When I got to college, there was a lot of questions that I got, and I didn't understand why I was getting them. And I wasn't prepared to answer those questions. And so what I wanted to do was make sure that the next generation was prepared. And so I think part of my writing, I think in the Latino Legacy series is about that. I know it's a historical fiction romance novel series, but there's a lot of nuggets in there about our history, art, and what, parts of our heritage that, people hadn't talked about or hadn't written about. So now there's documents that people can refer to that say, hey, this is what has been done. This is who we are. So yeah, and I think, and hopefully, like you said, the stuff that we're doing now will just help the next generation to do even more and even better. That's always my hope, that the next generation can do more and better to move forward. So yeah, that's so cool.
Well, thank you.
So tell me a little bit about, is there any kind of nuggets of wisdom that you kind of wanted to share with people that you learned from that?
Yeah. You know, when I think about the book, and this is the book that I wrote, An Outburst of Dreams, and it's a book about family history, family memories. I grew up as a migrant worker. I went to school 2 complete years. That was my 1st grade and 12th grade. And in between, we would go to school part of the year, and we would travel back and forth to migrant camps and so forth. And even though those were challenges and obstacles as a child, you just go with what the parents take you, and you just kind of survive. But that certainly brought back a lot of memories and history. One particular challenge that we had was when my mom died when I was 10, and we were on the migrant field, and she became sick, and we finally brought her back to a big hospital back in Temple, Texas. And she passed away for about 3 months after she got sick. So that's something that you really see a lot of pain. I remember also in the migrant fields at that time, that's why I always liked Cesar Chavez, because he was always promoting sanitary work and better conditions. Because I remember in my book, I've got a picture of an airplane spraying the pesticides, and you could smell them as you were picking cotton and so forth. And so those kinds of things, I wanted my kids and my grandchildren to know that we went through that it was real, that you just don't read it in the news, in the textbooks, but it's also something that we as parents and grandparents experience on a personal basis. And so when you talk about some of the nuggets and so forth I wanted to share, it's trying to give the children and grandchildren a whole new realm of history of who they are, because they in essence are the legacy that's going to follow us. And if they don't have a complete background and history of who we were, then there's going to be a hole in their historical perspective, and I don't think they will be complete individuals, particularly now, because I want them to make sure that they understand the culture, the language, and the history that goes back with us as who we are as Latinos. We're Chicanos in my case, and I remember when I first started writing the book, I asked my dad at that time, he was falling ill and so forth. And so I said, I got to find a way to capture information. So I had him write his own notes in his own handwriting. And so these are the notes that I used to kind of capture and began the writing of the book. So that's kind of the genesis, because from there, I was able to put pieces together by dates and by location and events and so forth, and people who were with us and so forth. And so that helped a lot. And then when we wanted to talk about challenges, for example, there were different times when we would be going on our trip in the caravan, moving from our hometown to the migrant place 300 miles away, and we'd stop at a restaurant and we'd go in and try to order, and it was a restaurant that had at the time buses welcome drivers eat free, because they wanted people to go in. But then when we got there, they told us that we had to order and not go in. So we all got angry and this and that, but it was one of those places where we weren't allowed to go in. We just went to order our food and eat it in the truck or outside. And then I also have a picture in my book where we have in our burial sites, and you have 2 plots, and one plot says Mexican Plot 1, the other says Mexican Plot 2. So that's where and it was by the creek where the terrain was kind of in a decline. And so that's where a lot of the Mexicanos and so forth were buried at that time. And I have a picture of that plot that says Mexican Plot 1 and 2. The swimming pools, the whole work. Those are the things that kids and grandkids these days may not see, may not know about. They may see it on pictures that happened 50, 60 years ago. But it's different when you tell them that you as a person experienced that and that you lived through that. And so that's kind of It's one of the things. If I may, I'm going to do a quick song for you.
Oh, I would love that. Yes, thank you.
You know, when I was talking to my dad and I asked him about who he was, where he came from, he was born in Concepción del Oro in Zacatecas in Mexico. And then I've done a lot of research and I've captured a lot of information via Ancestry.com on the Mexican history and my parents and grandparents and great-grandparents and so forth. And so my mom's name was Felicitas. And so I asked my dad one time, so what's your favorite song? And he said, well, my favorite song is Maria Elena. And I said, wait a minute, my mom's name is Felicitas and your favorite song is Maria Elena. So he said, no. And so this song, Maria Elena, was written actually in 1932. And it was written in honor of the First Lady of Mexico at that time. It was Maria Elena. So that's where the name comes from. And it goes something, I'm just going to sing a couple of pieces here. Tuyo es mi corazón, oh sol de mi querer, mujer de mi ilusión, mi amor te consagré. Mi vida la embellece una esperanza azul. Mi vida tiene un cielo que le diste tú. Tuyo es mi corazón, oh sol de mi querer. Tuyo es mi corazón, te lo entregué. It goes something like that, and it's a beautiful song, and then I can see now why he liked that song. But it was, when you begin to pick up information about people and about parents, and I think one of the things when you think about, well, what kind of advice would you share with people, and what would you suggest that they to get started in writing and to think about who they are? One is to pick up on everything that people do, observe, whether it's the landscape, the language, the culture, the music, everything fits into, because that's who we are. At the beginning of my book, I write, there's a sentence that says, cada cabeza es un mundo. Every mind is it's its own world. And I like to translate it to be every mind is its own universe, which means that every person out there that's listening to us right now has their own mind, their own mindset, their own universe. And sometimes those universes collide. And so, but nevertheless, we have our own persona. And so one of the things I would certainly advise young writers is to start young, to start writing like you did at an early age. And also act on your instincts, because I think we all have instincts about who we are and where we want to be, where we want to go. And sometimes we don't act on that. But so I would say pay attention to what is it that you want to do and what are your instincts. And also be observant and write down your notes as you think it, because many times we'll see something or we'll hear something, we'll observe something, and our mind's taking a posture of finding a solution mentally. And if we don't write it down, we'll forget what we actually were thinking. So if we can write down exactly, or as soon as we can, what we observed, what we felt, because that will lead on to some writings later on. And then also be disciplined, be organized. One of the things I found out about the book is that I was writing all over the place, and I would have notes, and all of a sudden say, "Oops, this goes over here, this goes on this other chapter." And so you have to really find a way to be disciplined and follow a trend, a pattern, to be organized. And the other is also, many times we let other people tell us who we are, because they begin to hijack our thinking. They begin to take us a direction that we may not want to go there, or it may be expedient because we can get there quicker, but that's not really the way we want to go. So we have to set our own footprints. And because if we follow other people's footprints and it's not ours,
Yeah.
we're following someone else. And so that's the other thing, how be bold but at the same time, don't be reckless. You got to do your research. You know what it is you want to do, because if you go without any thinking, then it's not going to get you anywhere. And also, we have to remember that we are our own best advocate. In other words, no one's going to be there for you more than yourself. And so you have to really follow that process and really be something to take care of yourself. And then probably the one last thing would be proud of your family, your heritage, and celebrate it. I mean, don't hide it. Don't be ashamed of it. And I talked to a couple individuals as I wrote the book, and I even mentioned one in the book, a beautiful person, and he is probably my age or maybe a little younger, but he still regrets not speaking Spanish because his parents want him to speak English only. But he still loves the language and the culture and so forth. And so sometimes we give up on certain things that we think may not be important, but certainly culture, language, and who we are is always at the top of the list. So accept it and celebrate it and be proud of it. So.
Wow, there's some amazing nuggets of wisdom. I'm going to have to listen to this and just write it all down. Because all of that is so true. And I think celebrating who we are is huge. I didn't learn Spanish because my parents got in trouble for speaking it. So I didn't learn that as a first language, and mine was the first generation, that too. And there's a piece of your culture and your heritage that you're missing when you don't know the language. When you hear your parents and your grandparents and your tios and tias, everyone talking in this language, and you can't understand it, you want to find out what's happening. And there's a certain perspective, a certain view of the world that comes from being able to speak from that perspective, and understand it. And so I learned, I wanted to know what they were saying, and a lot of times they didn't want us to know because, we were getting in trouble or whatever it was. But so that was when I was even more curious. And so I picked up on it, and I tried to learn it as best as I can. And it does. It makes a huge difference to be proud of that. So, wow, thank you so much. This has been such a treat to talk with you and to get to hear a song. That was amazing. So you're multi-talented, musician and a writer and professor and
it's taken a while.
Pioneer.
It's taken a while.
Yeah, that's
I forgot to mention also, my wife Laura was born in Mexico, so we lived in Mexico with her mom for 7 years. Nice. And so that was interesting for me, having been born in Texas and the U.S. but my parents' origin in Mexico, and then going there and actually living in Mexico for 7 years. So that was certainly a very growing time for me, and it kind of brought me back full circle as to where my parents were and where they came from, and then I was there, and so that's something.
How was that? I know, especially when you have, you're of Mexican descent, or even I guess any other Latin American country, or wherever it is that you come from, there's a sense of going back home and being a part of that culture, because it is sort of who you are and what's shaped you to who you are. But actually living there is probably a little bit different. So did you feel like you fit in as a part of the culture that was around you?
I fit in with some of the immediate family members, but as a culture overall, there was a distinct difference, because I didn't grow up with some of the sayings, expressions, some of the music, and because those of us, for example, who were born in Texas, we speak sometimes what they call Spanglish, when we mix English and Spanish. And so there were times when I was speaking Spanish and I forget a word in Spanish, and I pause and they correct me and so forth. And that reminded me a lot of, there was a professor way back in University of Texas at Austin called Gloria Anzaldúa. And Dr. Anzaldúa mentioned that we should always be unafraid of our language, whatever it is, whether it's Pocho, whether it's English, whether it's Spanish or a mixture. that's who we are. And so I never apologize for having limited Spanish in some cases, even though I think my Spanish is fairly good. And so, but nevertheless, I enjoyed it fully because I love the music, Mexican music and food and so forth. And so I was able to connect closely with some relatives and so that, and then also took a trip to my hometown and my dad's hometown while I was there in Concepcion del Oro and toured that and went to Zacatecas and so forth. So it certainly widened my perspective, my awareness, my knowledge, and made me a better person, probably a more complete person. So yeah, it was good.
Wow. What an amazing experience. I always say that, it's important to sort of immerse yourself in a place that's different or maybe even something that's a little more familiar, but also that's new and spend some time there. And you just grow so much, you learn so much and see the world from different eyes. And I love that. It's awesome. So cool that you got to go where your family was originally from too. That had to be.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
Well, it's been such a pleasure talking with you. I do want to ask you about CALMA and I guess ask you to share why you believe that this Colorado Alliance for Latino Mentors and Authors is such a critical need in our community today.
Yeah. When I began writing my book, the writing piece was, I could take ownership of that because that was on me. But then when I began to ask, okay, how am I going to get this published? Who can I talk to? And I was able to find a couple of authors, and I reached out to one in particular. And so he kind of walked me through, connected me with a typesetter, and so on the various pieces who write for the Library of Congress, get my ISBN number, the whole multiple steps that I hadn't thought about. And so when I think of aspiring writers, we need to find a way to help them jump those hurdles a little bit easier. So it's about access to people like you and I who already have gone through it, that we can help them and we can have them check off those points of things to do to get their books published. And also an opportunity because we need to encourage them. Many of them are thinking about writing. They just need a little push. And they need to find someone like you and others and talk to those people and say, it can be done. And this is what it's going to take. And these might be some suggestion ways for you to do it. And also mentoring. I think there's some young writers at the high school level, university level, that are already there, that are writing. How can we coach and mentor them and even make them even more productive down the road? And so it's about opening doors. And then the bigger piece is when you look at organizations out there, very few are focusing on Latino writers. Most of them are just general mainstream writers. And so they promote them. Those are the ones that show up on the media, on the magazines and so forth. And I think I wanted an organization that would say, let's just focus on Latino writers in Colorado. And because we have a lot of history, we have a voice that hasn't been heard, and we want to build on that history. We want to build on that, what it is we do. We want to honor the writers, and Latino writers in Colorado. We want to lift them up. We want to make them visible, help them realize those that are currently writing. And then we also have a lot of fantastic writers in Colorado already, the Latino, that have done beautiful jobs, have received multiple awards. Who are they? Does the public know who they are? And if not, let's share that with the general public in Colorado so they can be appreciated and celebrated because of their work and what they've done. So that's kind of another reason why I wanted to do all this. So, yeah.
I love that. That's amazing. And we can't do it without one another. When I was writing my book, I owe a lot to Mona Lobato, who had already published her book forever. And she took the time, an hour probably, I think we talked, and she was in Miami at the time, but she took the time to talk with me and share her experience and what she did and how she got it done. And so that was so super helpful. Another friend of mine that I go to church with, her sister is a writer. And so she spent some time talking with me as well and sharing her experience. Because when this is a new experience for you, you don't know where to start. You have this idea in your head and you just have the story, but you don't know where to go from there. And so you haven't been in that industry before. And so it is so critical to be that person that helps and to get, because the information is out there, and the more of us that we can get, bring to the light with these amazing works, the better off I think we all are, because these stories are so much fun, and they're so different and come from all these different perspectives and different genres, and they're all important,
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
My coach and mentor was Jose Aguayo, which you met a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
And he's written several books and so forth. And so he walked me through the process, and I was very grateful to him for putting me on the right path.
Yeah.
So you're right, we do need that kind of and so that's another reason we want to be able to do this. So. And
I just got his book. I had him send me a copy, and it's incredible. I browsed through it already, for a little bit, and I'm just so grateful that he's done that. And it's I don't want to say the name of it. Color of Duty.
Color of Duty. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and so just showcases all of the biographies of all of these people in the military, from World War II to Vietnam, and all these different things. And so it was it's a great example again of when we're not in the history books, Jose Aguayo's book is available, and we need to put it out there to make it more available so people can know this part of history that's critical. It's an integral part of who we are, so as a country. So I completely agree with you.
Well, another thing about CALMA is that hopefully we want to do a Zoom meeting with all the writers in Colorado. We're going to invite them all. And then later down the road, I can see us doing a writers conference where we have some of the current writers who have been very successful to be workshop leaders, and those who are aspiring writers can come in and learn from them. Those kinds of events we'd like to set up and help them, because that would be very powerful to have an experienced writer help one who's learning to publish and learning to write.
Absolutely. It makes such a difference.
Yeah.
So tell me, where can we find your book? Can you? I need to get a copy of your book too, but can you lift it up for us and show us the cover?
Yes. It's called An Outburst of Dreams. And you can see in the shadow myself in the military cap. In the back, you'll see a shadow of my mom and dad, and a little bit of myself. And it's what I can do I can mail it to you. So send me your address, and I'll be sure to send it to you. Okay?
Sure. That would be amazing. And so if people want to find your book, where can they find it?
I would say to email me or call me. Let me give you my email address. It's F and then Davila10 at Comcast.net. F Davila10 at Comcast.net. If you can email me, let me know, and I can certainly send the book to them.
And it's called An Outburst of Dreams, a memoir.
An Outburst of Dreams, memoir, yes. Yeah,
Thank you so much for sharing that and for taking the time to do this interview today and sharing your journey.
I wanted to close, if I may, with another quick stanza of a song.
Yes, love that.
I'm as a parting information piece, right now with this pandemic and our social distance and not being able to get together, and also a lot of the strife that we have racially, culturally, linguistic across the country, and a lot of anger, a lot of division and so forth. And I was thinking about this particular song, and the author's name is Catherine Lee Bates, and the song was written in 1893. She was an English professor, came to Colorado, and what she was doing a tour at a university here, went to Pikes Peak, and as she was standing up there, she wrote these songs, or the stanzas. I'm just going to do one stanza, but it reminds me a lot of who we are, and as we continue to look down at each other at times, this is something that we can hold in common, this particular song. Oh, beautiful, for spacious sky, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesty, along the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good in brotherhood from sea to shining sea. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good in brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Thank you so much. You have a beautiful voice, and that's a beautiful
Well,
way to close out our interview. And again, I
yeah,
come from a musical
yeah.
family, and music just speaks to my heart. So that was
Well,
a treat today. Thank you.
Well, thank you much. Thank you for doing this, Kimberly or Kim. And I'm very thankful. I forgot to mention earlier, I'm a 2-time cancer survivor, so that really helps me. And we have 4 kids, 10 grandkids. And Lott and I, as I mentioned today, we're celebrating our 18th anniversary. A lot of things to be thankful for. And so this particular song, I want to kind of remind all of us that we do have something in common, and that's we live here together in the U.S. So even despite our differences,
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure talking with you. And we'll see you soon for our next meeting with CALMA.
Yes, absolutely. Bueno, hasta luego.
Hasta luego. Have a wonderful day.
Okay.
Bye. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This has been a La Gente Legacy production in the CALMA series. Stay tuned for more.